Hey everybody, it's Dan. Welcome back and welcome to this review of the Stargrave Mercenaries box produced by Northstar. And as with all of these Stargrave reviews, this is sponsored by Northstar because they sent this to us to take a look at together. So huge thanks to them once again for facilitating this review for us. And we've now looked at two other sets in the Stargrave range. There are automatons and there's scavengers, which represent the 9th and 7th boxes in the Stargrave range, respectively. We're now jumping way back in time to the second box. This is the second box released in the range, the first being their crew, which we'll take a look at next. And I find that very exciting because I like seeing kind of the evolution of miniatures within a range. So this will allow us to take a little look back at kind of where the range began from a sculpting standpoint, from a design standpoint. The box is remarkably similar, actually, even to the automatons from a layout standpoint. I really appreciate that about Northstar in their Oathmark range, in their Frostgrave range. Everything's really consistent, which makes it nice from a collecting standpoint. I guess me being kind of OCD, it's nice just to see it all nice and neat and organized that way on a shelf even. So on the back, again, similar layout. We've got some painted figures, a little blurb on the left here about what's going to come inside of the box, and some brief information on what's contained within. If you're not familiar with Stargrave, it's their sci-fi equivalent to the Frostgrave game. It's a joint venture between Northstar and Osprey. And the rule set, as I understand it, kind of emulates what you see in Frostgrave, but it's a sci-fi skirmish game. And I've said it before, I'll say it again, I really dig the aesthetic. You can kind of see what I'm talking about with the cover art here, but it really comes through like with the automatons art, where it feels like, I don't know, like an 80s or a 90s sci-fi TV show, which makes it really cool. Inside of the box, if you were to pick this up for yourself, you're going to get 4 sprues of 5 miniatures. Again, 20 miniatures per box, and that's for, I think, all Stargrave boxes. Come with 20 figures, which mirrors kind of what they do with Frostgrave. There's a couple of exceptions for Frostgrave for like character sets, but I think they're all 20s in Stargrave. You get 2 of these flats of 10 bases apiece. These are 25mm rounds, which is very nice to have included. And as I just mentioned, you're going to get 4 identical sprues of 5 miniatures apiece, so we can isolate just the one and take a look at it together. If you're new here, welcome. If you're not familiar with my reviews, we're going to take a look at the sprue here in depth. We're going to look at all the bits, breakdown of them. I'm going to assemble a bunch of these figures, do some kit bashing, and then I'm going to do some scale comparisons with different manufacturers. I've got a bunch of miniatures from different companies in my collection, so we'll take a look at those, and then I'll give you my final thoughts. So let's dive on in here. So let me get my notes ready here. From a layout standpoint, this is very similar now to what we've seen with the other Stargrave sets, where you've got 5 bodies in the center. You've got a collection of weapons and heads that are on kind of flanking the sprue there. And a decent number of accessories, actually. This kind of splits the difference between the scavengers and the automatons from a like weapons and accessories ratio standpoint. Of course, some cuts have to be made when you're putting sprues together. Let's start with the bodies here. So in the middle, you can see we've got 5 bodies. It's interesting. I actually initially thought that this box came out after their troopers box, because the troopers are kind of like their space shock infantry is what they look like. Much more uniform look, very like Starship Troopers looking vibe to them. And this, from a concept standpoint, almost seems like it builds on that, where you've got similar like armor, I would say like less carapace here, but you can see how they're much more individualized, less uniform looking, which makes sense because we're dealing with mercenaries here. Maybe some former troopers turned mercenaries. But I really like how individual they are, how they all got their own gear. I will say, just out of the gates here, again, this being a older kit compared to the automatons, which is the most recent set, I do think the sculpting's a little more shallow and slightly less detailed. I think they look great. Still, I think they're going to paint up very nicely. And again, I like how visually interesting I find them. But if I've got an automaton here, I'll compare it to this body over here on the left. So again, just from a sheer detail standpoint, I think the automaton represents a step forward for Northstar over the past, what's it been, 6 years, something like that, since Stargrave came out. So it might even be that they've got a new sculptor. So curious to see, they have a tendency to do like Mark 1, Mark 2 kits, which usually represent male and female bodies, but I hear that there's some talk of number 3 kits, like they're going to go back and revisit some of their earlier sets to kind of redo the sculpting. So we'll see what comes. But anyway, I think that these look fantastic still, even as they sit. Lots and lots to play with there. And again, I love how kind of covered with gear they are. That makes for a lot of fun. So let's talk about weapons here. Excuse me, let's talk about heads. I get so excited about guns that I want to just jump ahead of my normal pattern here. There's 22 heads. Again, I mentioned that this feels like it builds on the Troopers box, but this actually came out prior to the Troopers box, or maybe concurrently with the Troopers box. I might be misspeaking there. There's 22 heads scattered around the body. I'm going to categorize them as 14 that are either human or covered up, so you can't really tell. But you can see here, there's some human examples. There's a covered up, masked example here. They they give me like early Imperial Guard vibes from Games Workshop. They give me Killzone vibes. Like this guy here, I think is actually supposed to be some kind of like bug creature, but the eyes helmet combo reminds me of the old metal Games Workshop Imperial Guard. Here's some more covered up, like masked examples here. Again, really harkens to some 80s and 90s sci-fi shows. I think they look really cool. Very emotive faces, really expressive. Which gives you a lot to play with here. And then, so I mentioned there are 14 human or enclosed heads, and then there are 8 non-human heads. And you can see them, they're kind of clustered. There's a ape of some kind, chimp. Got like kind of an undead looking head here. A couple of reptile looking creatures. A badger here, which will be interesting. I had a specific request in my last video to do a like rocket raccoon equivalent with the badger head from a kit bashing standpoint, so I'll see what I can come up with. And you got the It's Not a Trap guy over here. So again, 22 total heads, and again, I think the heads are really great from a sculpting standpoint. Wish maybe I had a few more enclosed heads, because I think that's how I want to do mine up. But again, talking about it playing on the Troopers frame, the Troopers have a bunch of enclosed heads masks, so if you're looking to do that, probably worth picking up both boxes, kind of mixing these bodies in, and I think you've got yourself some pretty cool looking Imperial Guard for 40k if you wanted to do something like that, or some kill team. Let's talk guns now, since I've been so patient. We're going to look at, again, kind of rotating around the sprue here. A good mix of different looking firearms too. We saw in their scavengers set that they do a really good job from a like gun design standpoint at making it look both believable, but also like sci-fi futuristic looking, and I like that about them. So there's 8 that are in this kind of bullpup design where the magazine's loaded behind. Oop, I'm off camera there. Magazine's loaded behind the grip. So you've got 8 of those, and it's cool because even those have some differences to them. Sort of like longer stocks on some. Some of them have, like smaller sights, like proper scopes on some of them. And yeah, a couple over here. You can see even the fronts are a little bit different. That one kind of gives me Halo vibes. And if I rotate, you'll see you got a couple more over here. Note again, even the difference between this one, which has some kind of laser sight on the front, and this one, which does not. Same basic frame, but again, it gives them a real like Mercenaries vibe, like they are customizing their own weapons. So not so focused on uniformity, which is cool. You've got one AK, which looks very similar to most of the weapons that we saw in the Scavenger's frame. So cool to see that one included. We have one shotgun, which is down here. At least I'm calling it a shotgun. You can use it for whatever you want. We've got 2 grenade launchers, actually. It's interesting. There's one larger one up here. And then down here, there's a smaller one, which could be, again, anything you want it to be, but it looks like a grenade or a smoke launcher to me. There's one sniper rifle up here. Then just beneath that, there's one kind of MG looking gun. Looks a lot like a sci-fi MG-42. It's even got the bipod up in the front there. Got one rocket or missile launcher down here. This one looks kind of like the bullpup design over here that we talked about. This one looks like it's intended to be maybe some kind of plasma gun. You can see the front is different. But again, that could just be one more battle rifle, whatever it is you want to call it. And from there, you've got a handful of pistols. They're all right arm pistols. So there's this one here, this one here, which is almost like a single use shotgun or something. And then there is one more right here. And then rounding things out, we've got one knife. Sorry to keep spinning the sprue on you, but one knife down here. And there's actually two knives total, but one is loose up here. So you have to do a little bit of conversion work to get that one. It's also a left hand. Both of these are left hands. And then there's a couple of really neat items. There's this like ammo box, a case. These are all left arms. And then there's like a tablet looking thing, which is somewhere, which is down here. This is the tablet looking thing. It took me legitimately like 60 seconds to find it. So that'll be a edit. And then there's a grenade piece over here. I guess this is meant to be like a grenade launcher, not a shotgun, but still. So 3 grenade launchers if you're fancy. And then scattered around the sprue, I'll just do one pass of it. I'm sure you've already spotted them. There's 13 of these little individual accessory pieces here. So there's some up top. There's this like backpack down here. And then a bunch of accessories down here. And as we saw with the scavenger's box, that one is, I think it has twice as many accessory pieces, including like backpacks and stuff. So if that's what you're after, strongly recommend you pick up that set too, because it's going to kit bash with these very well. So on that note, let me put some of these together. We'll do some kit bashing across the sets that I have with maybe some other manufacturers as well. See what I can make and see what they look like all built. Alright, here we go. So I've made up 5 of these figures straight out of the box, and then I've done quite a few conversions actually. So we're going to take a look at all of those in short order here. So here's one. Again, just straight out of the box. I think these look great, all assembled. Some of the poses you can get are really fantastic, even from just like dry fitting different arms to different bodies. Again, that's one of the things I love so much about multi-part plastic is like even just from tilting the head different directions, you can see it makes like for a totally different pose if you imagine him looking this way. So that's pretty cool. I really like that guy a lot. And here's another one where, again, just the tilting the head a different direction would make for a completely different miniature. I will say that I find the human heads to be a little bit stronger in this set. I think that's the main difference, other than again the different gear on the bodies between the Trooper set and the Mercenaries set, is that the Mercenaries includes some non-human heads. But really in no case that I find the non-human heads to be better on these bodies than the human heads, just from, again, pulling them off the sprue and checking to see how they fit against some of these. But just because these bodies are so human, maybe it would be better to just have a separate, like, non-human set, essentially. Like, here's the Admiral Akbar looking head, but you can see, like, that's just a very, like, buff human body that he's on. So, like, certainly, like, the chimp body, some of the lizard-looking bodies, I don't think look quite as convincing, but some of the more humanoid ones look okay. But all in all, I think they're really great from a design standpoint. I really dig them. Let's look at some conversions here. So we've seen, I guess, 2 of these from other videos, but I wanted, just for the sake of completedness, to share some of them here. So this is an automaton body with a head and set of arms from this Mercenaries box. And this is more just to show off what I keep talking about, which is that all Frostgrave, all Northstar sets really, but Frostgrave, Stargrave, both Mark sets are all totally interchangeable as far as I'm concerned. From a bit standpoint, they designed that way on purpose. So this is a Mercenaries body, but with Scavengers arms and a head. And likewise, this is a Scavenger's body, but with mercenary bits. The arms and the head are for the Mercenaries set. So you can see from a scale standpoint, they all fit together perfectly. Another strong argument for what I advocate for, especially when you're dealing with Northstar kits, which is to pick up multiple at the same time. So get the Scavengers, get the automatons, get the Troopers, get the Mercenaries. If you're planning a project, they just become exponentially better as you start blending some of these kits together. So now we're getting a little bit weird, but this is still Northstar. So this is an Orc infantry body with arms and a head from the Mercenaries box, which I thought looked pretty cool as some kind of heavy support guy. Here is a Frostgrave Wizards 2 body with the squid head and arms from the set to make some kind of diplomat, I guess. But I thought it looked pretty cool. Again, showing that scale works very well between all of these North Star sets. And this is one that was specifically requested, which is a Rocket Badger, in this case, conversion. This is using an Oathmark Goblin body with arms, head, and the backpack from this Mercenaries box. And again, I think that this head works much better on this body than it does on some of these like roided out marine looking bodies here. So you can get pretty clever with the conversions. The other benefit of the goblins and the orcs specifically is that the attachment point from the heads, they're like the necks are kind of hunched over, which works well for some of these creature designs. A few more to show you here. So now we're moving over to Wargames Atlantic bodies, just to show that I feel the scale is very comparable between North Star and Wargames Atlantic, certainly from a height standpoint. You have to be mindful again of attachment points, so if you're not afraid of like doing some cutting work, but also you have to pay attention to scale of the hands. I think are a little bit more true scale on the Wargames Atlantic figures versus the North Star figure. So this is Wargames Atlantic Guard's body, conversion head. This is actually stuff from the Scavengers set, but again, we're just talking about scale here for a second. But here's one that I did up. This is their Le Grenier infantry, but with arms and a head from the Mercenaries box, making something from, again, the video game Killzone, maybe Battlestar Galactica, giving me that kind of a feeling. And then finally, I know people have been asking for North Star to do a Stargrave like colonists box, like villagers, or I guess you would call them colonist civilians. It's probably the better term. So this is using the Wargames Atlantic villagers set. The pickaxe and the body are from that set. And then I used the one arm and head from the Mercenaries box. So you can get a pretty cool mix of different miniatures if you're willing to do some kit bashing. Let's throw them on the Lazy Susan now and we'll see how they all scale up. All right, here we go. I'm going to give it a slow spin here on the Lazy Susan. You can see the names of the various manufacturers and ranges that the figures primed in white are from, just written in red on their bases. The unprimed plastic figures, of course, are from this Mercenaries box. Pay a little attention to the base height. I messed up. I wanted to glue them down onto the same bases, but I forgot. So what I've done is I've stacked up two of these 25mm flats from North Star. And I think the height's about the same, but you can see there's a subtle difference. So just something to be aware of if you're trying to compare scale for yourself. So what's the final verdict? It's a fantastic set. It still holds up, despite being the second one that they produced. From a design standpoint, from a production standpoint, it's all really great. And yeah, a little bit of mold lines. Like, again, I didn't talk about that at the build stage like I normally do, but I always point this out that you can completely get rid of them, even just with like a fingernail. So certainly with a file with an X-Acto knife, this is absolutely great from a production standpoint. Great addition to have in your collection. And on that note, like that's what I advocate for, certainly with Stargrave as well, but really any North Star range, be it Oathmark, be it Frostgrave, that they become exponentially better when you start blending these sets together, which is why I advocate for, if you have the means to, kind of save up for your projects so that you can kit bash the Mercenaries with the Troopers, or the Mercenaries 1 with Mercenaries 2, or the Mercenaries with the Scavengers, because both of those sets on their own are great, but they become even better when you start blending them together. And North Star deliberately made these sets so that you could do that. And consider too that you don't even have to do that just if you're a Stargrave player, right? Like I see so much potential with these figures for other game systems, like one-page rules, like some tabletop games, like Warhammer 40k, right? You don't have to just use Games Workshop miniatures for 40k. That's one thing I've been advocating for a long time on the fantasy side, and will advocate the same way on the sci-fi side. And just look at the price point, right? Like $30 for 20 of these figures from most of the distributors I've seen, compared to Games Workshop, which is often twice as expensive, in some cases, depending on which set you're picking up, for half as many miniatures, right? So something to consider, right? That you can get two of these boxes, usually for the price of one 40k set. So, and you're going to get a lot of miniatures with a lot of variety, and I think the detail and the quality is all right up there. So something to think about. Really grateful to North Star, as ever, for sending this to us to take a look at together. Another great entry into the range. Excited to see what comes next in the Stargrave range. And speaking of which, I do have one more Stargrave review to do of this batch that was sent to me. I have some more Games Atlantic stuff to review. I've got now a Victrix set to review. And I know some have been calling or asking for, some painting content, some kit bashing content. I do have that upcoming. I appreciate your patience with it. Those videos are a little bit more erratic from a production standpoint, less regular flow to them. So again, I appreciate your patience with that. But got plenty coming if it's something that interests you. Appreciate you guys not only for your patience, but for dropping by for this one in the meantime. And until next time, happy gaming.